Today I'll be teaching an English lesson on how to construct a proper 5-paragraph essay. A majority of people cannot write proper essays and they think it's very difficult, but essays follow a simple formula. So here's the basic outline of an essay. It follows a simple IBC format: introduction, body, conclusion. The introduction's the map, the guide for the reader. It says the purpose for the essay. It states the thesis, which is the writer's opinion on the topic. It contains lead-ins and supporting details. The body elaborates on these supporting details, one supporting detail per paragraph. And the conclusion is just the summary for the whole essay and restates the thesis and all arguments. So before we start, there are many different kind of essay types. Depending on what subject and the topic of the essay, the type of essay, it has a different structure. For example, there are comparison essays, and it has 6 paragraphs to the body, no less. But for this essay, we'll be using an argument essay format. So what will your essay contain? The introduction. Every essay contains an introduction. The introduction guides the reader on what the essay will be written about. So basically, your introduction's the map, your guide, so the reader knows what the essay will be written about. The first few sentences of the introduction contains lead-ins, introducing the topic, and soon after the thesis. For topic sentences, also known as lead-ins, they follow these 2 basic rules. It introduces the topic, but doesn't give your point of view. So basically that means it just introduces what the essay will be about, but it doesn't give the thesis or what you think about the essay. So for example, the essay topic is media the biggest influence on adolescents' behavior. The topic sentences would be, believe it or not, our gigantic world revolves under the small world called the media, so on. It doesn't really say what the writer thinks about yes or no. If it's the biggest influence, it just introduces the topic. So part 2, the introduction. After lead-ins are written in the first 2 sentences, the thesis is stated. The thesis is the opinion of the writer on the essay topic. So throughout the whole essay, the writer will talk about their point of view and stick to the thesis with nothing else. After the thesis, 3 sentences follow explaining the 3 supporting details to prove this thesis. So the sample is, media is the most important influence on adolescents' behavior. Because of its big influence, it creates a tremendously negative effect on adolescents' behavior. So the writer stated their thesis that yes, it's the biggest influence, and they explain why it's the biggest influence. So after the thesis, 3 sentences follow explaining the 3 supporting details to prove this thesis. The supporting details are the 3 sentences to prove the thesis and try to persuade the reader on this thesis. It usually follows this order. The strongest supporting detail goes last in the last paragraph, the weakest point second, and the second strongest in the first paragraph. So these are the examples for supporting details. So this is the introduction sample, the entire introduction essay. So to mark everything down, the red parts will be the lead-in, and the first 2 sentences would be our lead-in. It basically just talks about the topic but doesn't give the writer's opinion on the topic. So for the green pen, we'll be stating the thesis. And the second part would, this third sentence would be the thesis. It shows the writer's opinion on the topic that media is the most important influence on adolescent behavior. So for the blue one, we'll be using for the supporting details. So the next three sentences would be the supporting detail. So the supporting detail are the three sentences in the body that expands on the thesis and tries to prove it. So last but not least, the black pen will be the concluding sentences. It wraps up the whole introduction essay. So you could probably read the whole essay. The first two sentences would be our lead-ins. The green highlighted part would be our thesis. The next three sentences would be our supporting detail. And the black box would be our concluding sentence to end the introduction. So the body. A traditional essay contains no more or no less than 3 body paragraphs. Depending on the type of essay, there may be more than 3 paragraphs. For example, a comparison essay contains at least 6 body paragraphs. Each paragraph elaborates on one of the supporting details mentioned in the introduction. So if the 3 supporting details will be expanded on and explained more in the body. For one paragraph, there will be 1 supporting detail. While elaborating on each supporting detail, the writer must stick to the thesis mentioned in the introduction. So the thesis is a very important sentence, but without the 3 supporting details, the thesis cannot be proven. So here's the supporting detail from the introduction. When you're writing your body, you have to remember to also add facts and to sort of make it accurate and true, not just something you found on the internet. For example, this fact I found. And summarize the essay, the conclusion. The conclusion is kind of like the introduction, but the conclusion summarizes the essay instead of introducing the essay topic. So the introduction would introduce the essay and what you're going to be writing about, but the conclusion does the opposite. It summarizes what you just wrote about. So in the conclusion, the thesis is restated and the supporting details are concluded. So at the end, the thesis is mentioned again, so you remember what the writer's opinion was, and the arguments are just sort of summarized. If the essay is well written, the reader may be persuaded. If your essay is very organized, it's more likely that the reader will understand what you're trying to say and will be persuaded by your essay. So to sum up my presentation, the introduction is the map for the whole essay. The body contains the 3 supporting details to prove the thesis, and the conclusion summarizes the whole argument. Hopefully you learned something about how to write an essay, because in high school it'll be very essential to know about it. Yeah, okay.